I'm a massive fan of Remedy. I haven't played the original Max Payne games, but I have witnessed the psychological downfall of one man and known as the Alan Wake games. And I thought Quantum Break was pretty good, an ambitious concept that didn't fully land for me. My favorite of their games by far though is Control, and so when I heard that they were making a co-op shooter in the oldest house, I was beyond excited. Aesthetically, it looked just like Control, and I've been playing a ton of Vermintide 2, Darktide, and Helldivers 2 recently, so this game was going to fit into my current drug of choice. It's unfortunate then that I have to say, FBC Firebreak is not good. Its confusing game mechanics and boring, repetitive gameplay make it one of the most disappointing games I've played in a very long time. Also, quick disclaimer, some of the footage on screen is going to be blurry as hell because, being the genius that I am, I didn't change the settings correctly in OBS. So if it's blurry, it's not your screen, it's my subpar recording, my deepest apologies. But to start with what I liked, I think the setting and tone of the game is quintessentially Remedy. The locations look incredible, with the game revisiting a lot of locations from Control that already looked astounding. I also very much appreciate how the game emulates the level design of Control with its brutalist architecture and 70s inspired interior design. Although this might feel like a Control-C, Control-V situation, I really don't mind as the game is set not too long after the events of Control, and so the locations would look pretty much the same. Also, the tone of the game maintains that classic Remedy wackiness, which I think really works here, especially with the sticky notes mission. That being said, I dislike almost every single other aspect of the game. It's almost difficult to know exactly where to start, so I guess I'll just begin from the beginning. The basics are not explained properly to the player at all. You have 3 different kits to choose from, each with their own unique abilities that are useful during the level. The Fix kit, for example, has a wrench for repairs and also staggers enemies. I thought that the wrench would also damage enemies, but no, it just staggers them. So then I got a little annoyed that there was no melee combat in the game, but we'll get back to that in a bit. Then I found out that when enemies are affected by water or electricity, the wrench does do damage to them. Thank God that this was fully explained before I started playing. It would have been really bad if I discovered this in the middle of a mission. Speaking of water, the showers heal you for some reason that I'm still not sure about. So when I started playing as the Splash kit, I thought that this was a healer class, but no, the water cannon thing exists to extinguish fires. It can get the humidifier upgrade to heal, but at its base design it doesn't. So water from the shower heals you, but water from the gun doesn't until it gets an upgrade. Sprinkler water doesn't have an upgrade, but that can heal you. Hell, even tap water heals you, but suddenly the water gun needs an upgrade? What are the rules here? And so, when it came to the jump kit, I thought that this would surely damage enemies, but no, it just stuns them. You have to use the stun gun in tandem with another class to actually damage enemies. As an example, the Splash kit sprays the enemies with water, then the jump kit electrocutes them. There are many things wrong with this. Firstly, the game does not make any of this clear to you at all. In a single-player, story-driven game, discovering how mechanics work on the fly can be a great incentive to get players to engage with the mechanics. But in a co-op PvE horde shooter, you need to know how things work before you start the mission, otherwise you could be the reason why your team wipes. Secondly, the idea of this synergistic gameplay mechanic is really cool on paper, but in practice it falls flat pretty quickly. The main problem is that enemies are pretty squishy as is, so the most effective tactic here is to just shoot them instead of using your ability and then waiting for your teammate to use theirs or vice versa. It also means that not only does your team need to have different kits from the get-go, which isn't always guaranteed, but even if your teammates have different kits, it's also not always guaranteed that they'll be by your side and using their abilities so that you can use yours in combination. Thirdly, I thought that if you had the Fix kit, only you could repair things, but no, you can repair things no matter what class you have, just a bit slower. This goes for the other classes as well. I understand why this is the case, as you need to accommodate for the players having any kit. So if a repair ability is required to complete an objective and everyone has the jump kit, they're not stuck. But then it loses the uniqueness of each class. So it feels like it doesn't really matter which class you pick, because the result is that you can do the exact same thing the other classes do, but just a little bit quicker. It makes the whole class system feel a little bit obsolete. And lastly, there should be melee weapons in this game 100%. Ammo pops up a lot, to get me wrong, but in times where I've run out of ammo, I would have loved to have been able to use the wrench to take enemies out. When ammo is out, that might be a good time to use class abilities, but they shouldn't be relegated to a last-ditch effort when they need to be precisely coordinated, especially when some abilities can damage your teammates. That's right, in a really chaotic game where synergy is highly encouraged, class abilities can damage teammates. Who thought this was a good idea? The way the health system works is also really confusing. So you have your health bar on the bottom left that goes down when you take damage and goes up when you take a shower, just like in real life. You also have armor, which takes the Halo Destiny approach and sits at the top of the screen, which just in terms of UI design is really strange. Why not just put an armor bar next to your health? Why put it up there? That's like having your ammo on the bottom right and your grenades on the top left. But your armor replenishes when you're around your teammates, and when you're alone it goes down. It's not that it doesn't replenish, it actually goes down. Also, as I mentioned before, shower water heals you, but water from the fucking water gun doesn't. I was willing to accept the absurdity of skin contact hydration healing because it's a wacky remedy game. But if you're gonna be weird, at least be consistently weird. It's also so hard to know where you're taking damage from. I'm far more concerned with taking environmental damage than damage from enemies because it hurts way more and it's way more unpredictable. This kind of mechanic leads to really frustrating moments where my attention is being divided between 2 or 3 completely different places, and so there were so many times where I went down or a teammate went down and I just couldn't figure out why. I'm also just so sick of the minigame you have to play whenever you want to do basically anything. Repairing without the fix kit? Minigame. Igniting a healer? Minigame. Collecting ammo from the ammo station? Believe it or not, you have to play the minigame for that. With all that being said, the game just isn't fun on a fundamental level. The gunplay is acceptable, but enemies go down so quickly and there's no heft to the impacts of your shots, so it ends up feeling really unsatisfying. What also doesn't help is the way that levels actually work. I know I praised the level design earlier, but the mission structure in these levels is just boring. When I played the first mission, it was over almost as soon as it started and I was really confused. I thought that maybe it was a glitch or something, but no. When you start the game at clearance level 1, you only play the first room of the mission, which involves doing the same task a certain number of times and then going back to the elevator. Now I understand that the more you play, the more clearance levels you unlock, and so there's more for you to do, but this is a terrible way to introduce the player to the game. It gives such a bad first impression of what the game is like. I played 3 different levels and got bored because I was doing the same task for like 5 minutes then leaving. There's more to the game, but you wouldn't know that if this is your experience when you first started playing. And even when you unlock more clearance levels, you repeat the same task a number of times, and sometimes maybe there's a slight variation, but for 90% of the game, it's just so repetitive. So, what do you get for putting all of this time and energy into unsatisfying gameplay and boring missions? Some of the worst rewards I've seen in a very long time. Most of the upgrades are all about doing the exact same things, just doing them more and better. There are some new abilities that are really useful, especially when it comes to revives, but for the most part, it's having more ammo or running for longer. Well, what about new weapons and items then? Yeah, I mean, you get new weapons through requisitions, but to unlock subsequent pages, you need to buy basically everything on the page, even if it's stuff you don't want. I know that other games have a very similar system, but the main issue with this one in particular is that the same item or weapon appears multiple times on different pages, which means that to unlock another page, you may have to spend requisition points on a weapon that you've already unlocked. How does that make any sense? And let's say you haven't unlocked it already, but it exists on a previous page. Why not unlock it on a previous page where it doesn't cost as many points? Why even have it as an option on a later page where it costs more? You can also unlock cosmetic items on these pages, but they look awful. The character design in general is just pitiful. It looks so tacky and thrown together, and the cosmetics for the most part are the exact same armor pieces with different colors. Just imagine if we got to play as FBC agents in cool suits just like in the game. I feel like that design would look incredible, and there would be so many interesting opportunities for customization. Again, don't get me wrong, there are some unlocks that are genuinely useful and that make a pretty significant difference to gameplay, but most of the unlocks are either useless, look horrible, or actively waste your time and resources. I'm not sure if you can tell, but I really don't like this game. This is a first draft idea turned into a full release with no in-between, and it shows. Remedy are renowned for making incredibly creative single-player narrative games, and I was curious to see what they would do with a co-op shooter like this. But having played FBC Firebreak for 4 hours, getting pitiful rewards and being bored halfway through my playtime, I think Remedy would have to make some No Man's Sky level of change to the game for it to be worthwhile. Despite all of this, you should not lose hope in Remedy. I don't see this as an example of a company downfall like Bungie. I just think this is a minor bump in the road to greater things. We should be encouraging studios to experiment and get out of their comfort zone to see what they would make. And even though it didn't work out this time, I wouldn't want to discourage them from trying something new again. Remember, this is one of the most creative studios working in the industry right now, and there are some very exciting projects on the horizon. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll catch you in the next video.